Hey again, everyone, and welcome back to the channel for our next weekly recap video, where we just take a look at stuff going on in the six scale world, particularly new releases, announcements, anything newsworthy. And there are, it's going to be a shorter video because there are really only two major announcements and a couple of releases, but um, two major announcements we're going to talk about, as you can see in the banner below, the Inart Hermione Granger and the Hot Toys Iron Man Mark VII exclusive that just dropped at the time that I'm recording this, just dropped on Facebook and social media. Now, we should have expected that it was going to drop. Hot Toys and Sideshow had already kind of teased that this is going to go up for limited availability tomorrow at 10 Pacific time. So I think that's 1 o'clock Eastern time. So for all of you who have experienced the queue like I have, just be prepared if you're interested. Before we jump into that figure, though, I think the real exciting announcement, at least for some of us, is going to be that Inart Hermione Granger. So let me pull up the screen so we can all take a look here. Let's see. And we'll just start thumbing through. So this is the third figure that Inart is releasing from the line. So they're going pretty deep into it. Now, before even getting into the figure, John from Inart, right, the Inart spokesman, he was on a stream and he was asked about sort of the popularity of the line. And he did mention that it's not a big seller for them, right? It seems like compared to the releases they've had, it looks like Joker obviously sold a lot. Gandalf is a huge seller for them. Pennywise was a very limited seller. This line seems to be falling a little above the Pennywise. So it's interesting, right? I think there's a lot of merchandise available from this Wizarding World Harry Potter line, and it's clearly a very popular thing. Having just come back from Universal Orlando, right, that place was packed even in an off season, or what's supposed to be off season for them in the middle of the week. So there's still a lot of popularity there. I know, I read the books and I was a big fan of the books and the movies, and my kids are now reading the books. So it seems to have some longevity. There's supposed to be a new version of the series dropping in 2026, I believe, right? With each book being broken down into a season for HBO Max. So we'll see if that even pans out. But there's still a lot of interest. So for me, I've already ordered the Harry Potter. I ordered the Ron Weasley. So just from looking at the line, there's no doubt that I want to complete the trio of the three main characters from the books, right? So Hermione is definitely going to be a pre-order for me. We'll get into the particulars of the figure, but going back to Inart's kind of mindset with this, they've already teased the Richard Harris Dumbledore at one of their shows, and we've pretty much gotten confirmation that that will be going up for pre-order, or supposed to go up for pre-order at some point this year. So I'm very excited about that. It looks like he comes with a ton of great accessories, at least from what they had shown, but there was still a work in progress. But that one was teased, and the announcement that also came up was surprisingly that there might be work going on for a Severus Snape figure. So if you're a fan of the franchise, Severus Snape, especially as portrayed by the late Alan Rickman, he was a great character, right? Probably has one of the most dramatic turns at the end of the series. I'll spoil it, but right, obviously there's a lot of things that go on where you think he's a bad guy, you think he's not, and then at the end he basically proves that he's not. Although you could argue that he still is kind of a jerk to all these kids, but it's probably one of the more interesting stories in the books, I think, and in the movies. So I think to get a Severus Snape is actually kind of nice. But then this is where Inart gets a little tricky. They kind of tease that might be it for the line, right? Maybe potentially, this could just be John, as he normally does, talking and building up some hype, talking about a potential Hagrid, which would be a huge figure, right? Scale wise, he towers over all the other characters, and the cost, I'm sure, would be equally as big because of the size of that particular character. But he did tease maybe something into that, but I don't know what else they would do from the first movie, and they're very much focused on the Sorcerer Stone. So um, the three kids, the three versions that we're getting from Harry, Ron, and Hermione are from that movie. And Dumbledore's from that movie. Snape, I would assume, is from that movie, and they seem to indicate that there's no current interest in going beyond that at this point, with a lot of focus on the fact that in the Chinese market, the first two movies are very popular, and then they kind of teeter off, right? So they're not as there's not as much interest, which is kind of funny because look, I love the first movie. I love the second movie. Is actually a personal favorite. I think Goblet of Fire would still be my favorite movie, followed by Chamber of Secrets. I know everybody loves Prisoner of Azkaban. It's a great movie, but those two for some reason just really resonate. And one of the things that I think for me as a collector, when I look at this line, as the movies progress, you start getting certain characters added in, right? So obviously, Prisoner of Azkaban adds in Sirius Black, played by Gary Oldman, and then by the time you get to Goblet of Fire, you get the return of Voldemort. So as one of the main key villains, you would think that this line would kind of continue on to, or at least you would get that villain. But as it stands right now, Inart is saying for the moment there's very limited interest in this line, uh, with a few collectors like myself picking up the figures, and then as a result, because of the waning interest in further movies, they're definitely going to look at that as potential future project, but not something in their immediate future plans, which is a little disappointing. But look, I'm not going to complain. We're still getting, from what he's saying, at least three figures now that are guaranteed to come out. A fourth one that's supposed to go on pre-order this year, and then one other subsequent one that should hopefully be coming. So 5 figures from the line, not bad, especially when you consider that the alternate is going with Star Aces products. And look, if you look up the Star Ace Harry Potter figures, some of them were okay, and then some of them were just total, like the likeness wasn't there. There were just a lot of issues. So this is definitely the best we've gotten of these characters to date. So again, ordered the other 2 figures. The other 2 did come both in a rooted and a sculpted version. Hermione does not. Hermione, the only way you can get her is it's a single package. So as opposed to Ron, which was a standard versus a deluxe, this one you just have to go all in and get the rooted, which I guess given the longer messy hair kind of makes sense. Since I had already gotten the deluxe for all the other ones because I want those diorama pieces, this kind of makes sense for me as well. But as we kind of thumb through the pictures, right? The first thing, look, I think the likeness is there to Hermione from the first movie. I do love the cloak. I think the work that Inart does with the tailoring so far seems to be pretty top notch, especially at a more reduced scale. And this diorama piece, the fact that you can assemble all 3 pieces together is pretty amazing. I like the accessory she comes with, the books, the quill, and the ink. I'll be honest though, I do feel like for the price point that this is going to go for, I know a lot of people are focused on the knees, which we'll talk about, but I almost feel like she comes with less accessories than the other characters, and I feel like they could have thrown a couple of extra things in there, because it just seems. I'm surprised that she doesn't come with more. What that more could have been, who knows? But just again, compared to the other characters in the line, uh, I'm not sure about it. Now, the books definitely go along with Hermione. Now, obviously, the big issue that everybody, including myself, have been kind of talking about are the knee joints. Uh, when John was discussing this on one of the streams, he said the plans right now for Inart are not to do any changes on the joints. They said they had done work on them, that it was to get the posability that people are used to. You needed the joints. Look, the ultimate problem. I've never had a problem with joints on figures. Right? We look at the Avatar piece from Hot Toys. We look at a bunch of like figures like Gore, the Rambo from 3-0. Exposed joints for me are part of the game when you're collecting 6 scale. What sets this particular figure apart from those, and I think that's why a lot of people are criticizing is that the cost, right? So when we compare that 3-0 Rambo was $200, this was going to come closer to the 5 mark, if not above. So there's just an expectation that you're going to get something a little bit different and a little bit better from those, or otherwise why are we paying extra for that, right? Now, we've gotten kit figures before. For example, 3-0 is doing the Stranger Things line, and again, they did the 11 figure from the first season. She's got exposed joints as well, and they tried to cover up the joints with high socks. Not always successful, but that figure was also $170, so it's a fraction of the price for this one. So that's where the expectations come in. You've got a company that's done the exposed joints at a way lower price point for a decent figure, and then you've got this one with Inart basically marketing themselves as a higher end 6 scale collecting company, and that's what I think is more driving the concern, right? And even Hot Toys people go after them for not having seamless joints, and for posability, I always tend to like that. um Look, there's no denying that it's for, if the idea is to give you the most accurate representation of the characters we've seen on screen, then this is kind of a fail for Inart. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to get the figure. I'm definitely going to get it. And the other thing is, with how limited these pieces are, I would recommend, if you're interested in the line, there don't seem to be many of us that are, but you jump on the pre-order list, because if you look at the Gandalf is going for a lot of money on the aftermarket. It was already an expensive figure to begin with. And then I think I've seen some interest in the Harry Potter figure at this point, especially with Ron coming out. So I think what you're seeing is there's going to be a buildup of demand, and that Harry Potter's already sold out pretty much everywhere. So if you're interested and you're a little concerned about the knees, I get it, but I would almost consider um, the question, right? Or ask yourself, do you want to miss out on this? And I think that ultimately depends on how big of a fan you are of the series. Because if you're not a fan, if you're just a casual person that's interested and you're more into just collecting figures, I get it. But if you're a huge fan of the movies and you've already got the other 2 figures on order, to me this was a no-brainer. And look, I like what Inart does too, like the raised hand look. It's very much in keeping with the Hermione character. So I think they're doing a lot of really good things there for the character. I like the wand. I like this cloak look with the winter look with the scarf as well. Um, so there are a lot of things you can do with poses where you're gonna hide the knee joints for a little bit, but it's just, again, for the price point, it's something I feel like Inart definitely needs to address at this point. The other thing, and it's kind of funny, when the Harry Potter went up for pre-order, they had the Hedwig, the owl, and I actually thought it looked fairly realistic and pretty impressive. The cat here, um, I think it looks decent, but because it's pre-posed in this kind of static stationary condition, like when you put it on the floor it looks fine, but when you have him draped on Hermione's legs, for example, like here, the tail, it doesn't look natural. And I'm gonna throw in another company here, Exo 6. They released their Lieutenant Commander Data from Star Trek The Next Generation, and to kind of alleviate the issues with the cat and posability, they gave us 2 versions. With one, I think it's a seated version of the cat, and the other one, is it a seated, or I forget, but they definitely gave us 2 versions. And the reason I bring it up is one version was specifically for Data to hold in his hand. So if a company like Exo 6, which isn't charging a lot, is also doing very limited productions in a niche market, is able to do that for you, why wouldn't an Inart be able to do that as well? So piece looks fine, but it's just, again, a little disappointing, and it almost feels like Harry, rightfully so, as the main character of the movies, came with a ton of accessories, right? The broom and all that, books, and if you got the deluxe, you got the added pieces. Even Hedwig with the cage came in, and then Ron came with a lot of great things, like the frogs, the cards, right? The I think he comes with the jelly beans. They all come with the sorting hat, But then you get to Hermione, and it feels like it's the less packed of the set. And I don't know if this is a case of Inart just looking at diminishing returns and saying, look, we're getting limited orders on these, so let's not go all in. But again, just for the price point, I would expect them to do a little bit more there. The accessories look fine. The books make sense, right? The quill. I mean, this feather's nice, but how are you going to pose it? I think there's a picture where they kind of show right here. They kind of show her doing the Wingardium Leviosa spell. You're never going to be able to do that unless you put some kind of wire, or unless Inart's going to come in with some funky attachment to the wand. So it's an accessory that you're just going to have there, but is it really going to do much for you? So look, I'm excited for it, even without the joints being fixed. I want to complete the trio of kins, and then I'm definitely looking forward to what Inart has coming forward with the Dumbledore and the potential Severus Snape, because I would definitely pick those up. My hope is that as the demand continues, and as Inart finally releases these figures, which is kind of the biggest issue with them, as Inart finally releases them, maybe there's a developed interest where they see that there's more worth pursuing in the line than what they're currently doing. So again, pretty excited for this release. I think the excitement stems from me. It's not that it's an Inart release, right? It's more that as a big fan of the books and as a big fan of the movies, right? Not just myself, but even my kids are starting to really get into it. This is one of those figures that's definitely something I want to have in the collection as representative of an iconic movie for me, or an iconic movie series at this point. So pretty exciting in that sense. So I think we probably beat that to death. I didn't want to go too far into the knees. Everybody's talking about that. So next, let's talk about what just dropped from Hot Toys, which is the Iron Man Mark VII. So look, it's a Mark VII. It's a limited Hot Toys exclusive that's going to be, I don't think they've released the numbers at this point yet, how many Sideshow's going to have. Sideshow just sent out a post on their Facebook group saying limited batch, so be prepared for tomorrow 1 p.m. Eastern to get in the queue, 10 a.m. Pacific. Look, I'm a Marvel collector. I think if you've watched my channel for any amount of time, you know that's kind of the primary IP I get. And this year's been a little more diverse, right? This year I've been picking up from different lines, filling gaps from movies that I don't normally, or that I now have an opportunity, like the DID Colonel Moore, right? We've got The Last of Us. Joel is in hand now. We've got some X06 figures. I'm kind of moving outside of the Marvel, not because I'm giving up on Marvel, but more because Marvel, while releases are still coming, there haven't been many pre-orders coming up for Marvel, right? We got God Loki, and I think that was pretty much it, other than some video game figures, which I'm staying away from the video game line. I want to stick to the MCU proper. Now, this suit is MCU, but the reason I'm passing on it, well, even if I wanted it, I'd have to get on the queue, right? So I'm not even. I might try maybe to help somebody out in the community if I can get it, then I can get it to them at cost, right? Not so they don't have to overpay on the secondary market. So I might try that. But for me, there's not much interest, right? It's a repaint of the Mark VII, and look, there's no denying that the black and gold looks great, right? I like the covers for the rocket launchers, the shoulder rocket launchers. I like the chrome look of the gold blended in with the black. It definitely has a visual pop to it, but it's just a color variant, right? So looking at it, even the stand, I do have to admit looks nice with that gold inlay around the perimeter of the circle. And look, the flaps, the deployed flaps, the armor. This Mark VII is a very popular armor. So I get why they're redoing it, but to me, this starts falling into things like the Neon Tech line. And I stayed away from those just because there's so many Iron Men in my collection already. I'm trying to stick to suits that we saw in the movie at this point. And this wouldn't constitute that. Now, if it had been maybe a concept design, maybe that would be a different story. But it really is just a paint variant, and as a die cast figure, you know it's not going to be cheap either. So, look, visually, I think there's nothing wrong with the figure, right? I don't want you to think that I'm just sitting here telling you the figure is trash, because it's not, right? It's a gorgeous looking release from Hot Toys, but it's just a repaint. And for me, having the Mark VII, having the movie suits already in that version, this seems unnecessary. So that's why I'm not that excited. If it had been another suit that we hadn't gotten from the movies, it might have been a different story. Also, it's limited, so it seems appropriate for that. And my hope is more with the announcement of this line, right, of this figure. Hot Toys teased that they had more releases coming over the summer, so I'm sure we're going to get figures from Deadpool and Wolverine, the titular characters to start with, so those would be exciting. But then as far as this Iron Man in particular, um he's fine. He's fine. We've seen it before. And that's the thing. It's nothing new. So it's difficult to get excited about that. So that was pretty much it for the news. Now, as far as releases, I think the only thing we've gotten, and so we'll go over them pretty quickly because I think it's worth looking at. First one is the Spider-Man from the video game line. Now, look, I told you I'm staying away from the video game line. There's no denying, though, that this is a beautiful piece, especially this mask that you get, this unmasked sculpt. And one thing I did see, somebody, and I don't know who it was, so I can't give them credit, but credit, you'll probably saw the images on any of the Facebook groups too. This symbiote that covers the sculpt can actually be removed. So that's pretty cool. And I like the tendrils that you're getting, all the attachments with the black suit. It's not just a simple suit, right? They've got the typical, I want to say almost the typical MCU variations in it. But it's a really beautiful looking figure. If I were collecting the video game line, and even not collecting them, all these figures are extremely tempting, but just not, I can't own everything that I want, right? Unfortunately, that's the reality of the hobby, unless you are a collector that that is able to do that, in which case that is pretty awesome. I wish I could say I could do that, but look, there's no denying it's a stunning figure, so definitely looking forward to seeing people have it in hand. The only one I'll tell you that was tempting, and I ended up passing because I didn't want to break my rule, was this Miles Morales, because I felt like this looked almost like an MCU proper spider suit, so I thought I could slip him into that collection. But listen, I know maybe not, it's not imminent, but I'm sure Miles will make an appearance in the MCU at some point. So I'll wait for that day. I'm in no rush to add just additional figures to the line, especially considering all the stuff I've already got coming in. And then the last one, which is an interesting one, was the Mark VII, again, right? Popular suit. We saw this in Iron Man 3, right? It's the open suit version. So this is a pretty much static piece, right? And the entire appeal of this is that you can basically recreate that scene from Iron Man 3 when Tony's having the panic attack and the suit opens up. Or I guess even from, well, that happens later in Age of Ultron, I think, with a different suit. But right where he kind of enters it to monitor his vitals. So it's different. I'll give Hot Toys credit for doing something a little more unique, like almost like the construction Mark III, where he has the top of the armor hanging. I have that diorama piece. That's gorgeous. This is all right. If you like that movie and you want something very specific to that shows all the inner workings of the suit, it's pretty cool. For me, just unnecessary again when you have so many other releases coming, and I'm sure we're gonna have a ton of other Marvel things heading our way. I am curious to see people get this in hand just to see how it looks. I think Sideshow already has an unboxing video. But that is pretty much it for this week. I think the only other news story worth talking about, the Venom 3 trailer dropped. It's interesting. I think you clearly see the symbiote from the end of Spider-Man No Way Home showing up as well. What the the storyline will be. Obviously, it seems like Venom. It's picking up right from the end of Venom 2 as well, or from the end of No Way Home. It's kind of a little bit difficult. It's picking up like all these little things, but obviously the highlight was the end of that trailer where Venom takes over a horse with Eddie. I am convinced if we don't get it from Hot Toys, we are going to get a third party Eddie Brock with that horse. It's going to be a static piece. It's not going to move, but unless it's something that's passing for like 2 seconds in the movie, someone's going to make it. We know Toys Era has done it before. They did the symbiote piece, the big massive statue that goes along with their Eddie Brock. So we know that they're capable of doing that, and we know Hot Toys is capable of doing those larger figures. For example, they've got the Dewback coming out, right, which is it's huge. It's probably around the same scale as this Venom horse symbiote would be. So that's pretty cool. But look, again, pretty light news week, right? Especially after everything we've gotten lately from third party. Last week was kind of intense. Last week was a very third party intensive week, but the big news story clearly is Inart. We've got the Hermione Granger going up for pre-order tomorrow. I would expect her, by the time this video goes up, she will be up for pre-order, and I'm sure she's going to be pretty much the same price as Ron Weasley was. And then for those of you that are going to try to get the Iron Man Mark VII Gold Edition, best of luck to you, because I know that queue system is always a little iffy. But that was pretty much it. So quick video today. So let me know your thoughts on any of these. If you agree, disagree, thanks for watching. And if you are enjoying the content, please consider dropping a like, comment, or subscribing. And we'll touch base on the next video.